Harlan Buck, Thorne had spent over 2 decades pouring his sweat and soul into his family farm, a sprawling patch of land handed down from his grandfather. It was more than dirt and crops to him. It was his heritage, his livelihood, the place where he'd raised his kids and buried his regrets. But in the eyes of the Evergreen Estates Homeowners Association, led by the iron-fisted Susan Hargrove, Buck's farm was nothing but a blight on their pristine suburban paradise. They saw rusty barns and roaming livestock as threats to skyrocketing property values, and they weren't about to let some stubborn old-timer stand in the way of progress. The trouble ignited at a county water board meeting one crisp autumn evening. Buck showed up to discuss irrigation rights, only to hear Susan railing against his operation. "That eyesore is draining resources and violating every code in the book," she declared, her voice dripping with disdain. "How is it even legal?" Buck's blood boiled. He'd paid his taxes, followed the rules, and built a life there long before these cookie-cutter houses sprouted up like weeds. But Susan's words lit a fuse, turning neighborly grumbles into outright war. Whispers soon reached Buck's ears, neighbors tipping him off about HOA complaints filed behind his back. Then came the surveillance, Susan and her cronies lurking at the property line, snapping photos like paparazzi. Buck ignored it at first, but when an official letter arrived from the HOA, demanding he comply with community standards or face consequences, he crumpled it and tossed it into the fire pit. "They can shove their standards," he muttered, watching it burn. Things escalated when a county inspector rolled up unannounced, clipboard in hand, spouting nonsense about violations. Buck demanded a warrant. "Ain't none? Then get off my land." He called Sheriff Tom Riley, an old high school buddy, who arrived sirens blazing. The inspector slunk away, but not before admitting the tip came straight from Susan's crew. It was clear, the HOA had pull, and they were using it to squeeze Buck out. The battle spilled online when Susan posted grainy photos of the farm on social media, labeling it a hazardous dump that endangered kids and lowered home values. Comments flooded in, some supportive of her cleanup crusade, others calling her out for bullying. Buck fired back with scanned deeds proving his ownership dated back generations. "This land's been thorn soil since before your McMansions were a blueprint," he wrote. The post went viral in local circles, drawing lines in the sand. Then came the drone. One sunny afternoon, a buzzing contraption hovered over Buck's beehives and fields, no doubt capturing footage for Susan's next smear. Buck grabbed his shotgun, pumped it once with a thunderous rack, and the drone veered off like a scared bird. He didn't fire a shot, just the threat was enough. Word spread fast. The farmer was armed and unyielding. Susan cried foul, claiming harassment, but Buck knew it was her spying that crossed the line. The real showdown hit when Buck woke to the sound of hammers and saws. The HOA had snuck onto his property overnight, erecting a chain-link fence around a chunk of his land, slapping up signs declaring it a future community park. Rage surged through him. This wasn't just encroachment, it was theft. He fired up his bulldozer, the engine roaring like a beast awakened, and plowed straight through the fence in front of a gawking Susan and her board members. Metal twisted and snapped, sparks flew. "This is my land," Buck bellowed over the din. "You want a park? Build it on your own damn turf." The county swooped in, confirming the fence was indeed on Buck's side of the boundary. But Susan didn't back down. She slapped him with a lawsuit, demanding redrawn lines, removal of his nuisance livestock, and hefty compensation for damages. The audacity fueled controversy. Was this HOA defending community interests or trampling individual rights? Local forums exploded with debates, some hailing Buck as a folk hero, others painting him as a relic resisting modernization. Pressure mounted from all sides. A slick developer, whispers said backed by HOA funds, knocked on Buck's door with a $450,000 buyout offer. Prime real estate, the man smirked. Buck slammed the door in his face. Not for sale, not now, not ever. Days later, sabotage struck. Someone tampered with his water valves, cutting off the supply to his crops and hives. Then his honey processor called, suspending their contract over a complaint about contamination, bogus, of course, traced back to Susan's network. Buck's yields plummeted, bills piled up. He gathered evidence, photos, timestamps, witness statements, and looped in his lawyer, Emily Voss, a sharp-tongued advocate for rural folks. Emily advised going public. Buck started sharing snippets with local news, framing it as a David versus Goliath tale. Susan countered by rallying HOA members for scouting trips near the farm, binoculars in hand, chanting about reclaiming space. Buck confronted them one evening, shotgun slung over his shoulder. Trespass again, and we'll see what the law says about self-defense. The standoff made headlines, polarizing the town. Supporters cheered Buck's grit. Critics decried his vigilantism. Media swarmed. Buck invited reporters to tour the farm, recounting its history, how it fed families during hard times, preserved local bees amid ecological crises. These HOA tyrants think they own everything, he said, voice cracking with emotion. The story blew up, viral videos showing drone chases and bulldozer demolitions. But the intrusions didn't stop. Zoning inspectors showed up warrantless, probing for infractions. A landscaping crew even rolled in with fake permits to beautify his land, chainsaws revving. Buck chased them off, but the stress gnawed at him. Criminal acts pushed it over the edge. One dawn, an excavator lumbered toward his boundary, HOA reps claiming they were reclaiming misplaced land. Sheriff Tom intervened again, halting the machine inches from Buck's fence. Then came the driveway blockade. Hooded men poured concrete to seal his access, tools clanging in the night. Buck caught them red-handed, flashlight beaming. Sheriff. Trespassers. Arrests followed, fingers pointing at Susan's inner circle. The arrests sparked outrage. Were these HOA tactics or outright crimes? Buck capitalized, hosting a press event on his farm. Farmers from neighboring counties showed up, signs waving. Hands off our land. Media ate it up, the story rippling statewide, igniting debates on property rights versus community control. The climax unfolded in the courtroom, a packed house buzzing with tension. Emily and consultant Mark Riley prepped a counterclaim. Harassment, defamation, business interference. Susan's side paraded experts with doctored maps and forged surveys, painting Buck as a scofflaw hoarding prime land. But Mark dismantled it piece by piece: historical deeds from the 1800s, satellite imagery showing unchanged boundaries, forensic proof of forgeries. Buck took the stand, his weathered face etched with resolve. He recounted every incident: the drone buzz, the fence crash, the water cutoff that nearly bankrupted him. They tried to steal my life, he said, voice thundering. But I ain't backing down. The judge, a no-nonsense veteran, saw through the smoke. Ruling for Buck, he dismissed the HOA's suit, awarded $210,000 in damages for lost income and emotional distress, and referred Susan for criminal investigation on tampering and fraud charges. Gasps echoed. Cheers erupted outside as Buck emerged, fists raised. Susan slunk away, her empire crumbling, facing potential jail time. In the aftermath, Buck installed a massive sign at his gate. Private property defended by Thornblood. Invitations poured in for speaking gigs on land rights, turning him into a symbol of resistance. Farmers nationwide toasted his victory, while critics grumbled about outdated rural holdouts stalling progress. But for Buck, it was simple, a win against bullies who thought money and rules could erase roots. As he watched the sun set over his fields, hives buzzing anew, he knew the fight had exposed a raw nerve in America: the clash between heritage and greed, where one man's stand could spark a firestorm.